Shirley Snapchat Science. Now in today's video we're going to be looking at intensive farming and factory farming. Now hopefully everybody in this video you're able to describe how energy is lost in the food chain. We then want to go on to explain how factory farming increases the efficiency of food production. And then after that we want to evaluate the advantages and disadvantages of intensive farming. Okay, so let's get right into it. Now, in this example, guys, we have a food chain. Now, in this food chain, okay, we have two. The first food chain, humans are the primary consumers because we are consuming the producers, which in this case are the crops, okay? Now, in this second example, humans are the secondary consumers because we're consuming the primary consumers, which have consumed the producers. Now, don't forget, going back to your B1 lessons, okay? In a food chain, energy is passed on. So the energy we have gained as humans has come from the cows, and they've got their energy from the crops. Now, the first food chain, okay, we get a lot more energy from directly eating the crops, okay, than the second food chain. And there's a few reasons why this is, okay? And one of the first reasons is the cow has used some of the energy that it's got from the crops to heat itself, to keep itself warm, okay? An essential process to life. Second reason why we've got more energy in the first food chain than the second is that the cows use some of the energy that it's got from the crops as life processes. For example, moving around, okay? Another reason why we've got more energy in the first food chain than the second is because some of the energy has been lost in the feces of the cow, okay? And the remains were passed on to decomposers, all right? So it's all about transferring energy. Now, what this means is we can make food production more efficient by essentially shortening the food chain. So if we wanted to make sure that humans are getting more energy from their food, we make our food chain shorter. So yes, that could mean essentially becoming vegan. So no more KFC, no more McDonald's, etc. How does that sound? Now guys, another way that we can make sure that we can increase our food efficiency is, other than reducing the number of stages in the food chain, what we can also do is restrict the energy loss by the farm animals. So essentially, the animals that farmers are growing, they're gonna make sure that they don't lose as much energy, okay? And therefore they have more energy to grow, etc. And therefore more energy is passed on to the humans. So let's look at how farmers actually do this. Now, efficiency, thinking about efficiency of farming and increasing food production, we have something known as factory farming. Now, as you can see, guys, in this example, in this picture, we have a farm which is essentially inside a huge factory, okay, and a few things go on. The first thing that happens is farmers prevent the cows or whichever organism they're raising from moving, okay, or they really restrict their movement. And now, one reason why this is important is this conserves the energy of the cow, so they're not using the energy to move around, and therefore it means they have more energy to grow. A second thing that happens in these factory farms is these factory farms are heated and they're warmed, okay? Now, what this does is this stops the cows or whichever organism is being raised from using its own energy to warm the body, and therefore, again, it has more energy for growth, etc., okay? So that's what we're looking at, factory farming today, guys. Now, the same is done with chickens. We can either have free-range chickens or battery chickens. I'm not sure if you can see this image, but in this image we can see chickens essentially in cages stacked one on top of the other, and their movement is restricted. If you go to stores and you read the label, you should actually be able to tell whether you're buying free-range chicken. A lot of people prefer to buy free-range chicken just because they say the chickens have better conditions. Some people actually think free-range chicken tastes better as well. Now guys, there are some reasons why farmers do this, okay? Why do farmers keep these animals in such cramped, close conditions? The first thing is that food production is more efficient. So we have much more food produced, and therefore food is cheaper, so it brings down food prices. The next thing is that we need to look at is it means that more energy is passed on to the humans. Now, if we're looking at what the disadvantages are, okay, we have reduced animal welfare. These animals are kept in really cramped conditions, okay? A lot of them don't move or walk. A lot of cows in these sort of conditions end up lame, meaning they can't walk, okay? Now, the next thing is, there's also an increased risk of injury in this example, simply because they're kept in close conditions. A lot of them are kept in cages or with their necks restricted, and the animals do themselves damage by trying to escape from these places, okay? And the last thing is there's an increased risk of disease. If you think about loads of animals and organisms living in a very close condition, there's going to be a lot of manure, a lot of feces laid on the ground. That means that a lot of these organisms have to be given antibiotics. Now, why is that an issue? It could also raise antibiotic resistance, okay? And therefore, by bacteria. And therefore, it means that all people who are eating these meats, they might develop resistance, their bacteria might develop resistance, and therefore they're more likely to become ill, okay? Now, if we look at the advantages and disadvantages, I don't think you can fully see this, but I'm going to go through this. So, the advantages of factory farming is it's more efficient, less energy is lost to the animals' surroundings, okay? The next thing is that the food that the animals consume is highly controlled, and therefore you can make sure that they eat the exact nutrients that you want them to pass along in the food chain, okay? And in the case of chickens, okay, the chickens are able to harvest more eggs if you keep them in these conditions. Now, the disadvantages of this is that disease can spread really easily. Don't forget, guys, we said that the animals live in close conditions, sometimes with feces around them, quite a lot of the time actually. Okay, so diseases spread easily. The animals in crowded conditions, okay, they're more stressed and therefore they're more likely to fight, and it's not really a good lifestyle, okay? And lastly, many people consider factory farming to be unethical, okay? It's inhumane. How are we allowed to keep these animals in such horrible and cramped conditions? Now, guys, a really important link here that we need to look at, okay? I want to go back to our factory farming slide. Factory farming also increases global warming, and let's look at how. First thing is that the factory that the cows are farmed in, they need to be warmed. And therefore that means more fossil fuels has to be burnt, okay, and therefore more greenhouse gases are released into the atmosphere, okay? So because we're using heaters to warm these factories. Second thing is, we're producing more and more livestock, and therefore more methane is produced, okay? So guys, hopefully by the end of this video, you're now able to describe how energy is lost in a food chain. You're then able to go on to explain how farming increases the efficiency of food production. And then after that, we want to evaluate the advantages and disadvantages of intensive farming. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and revise. Mr. Ashodi, signing out.